I was actually staring at this generic health pamphlet in a waiting room the other day.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen those.
Right. And it had this picture of a massive, quote unquote superfood salad, completely overflowing with raw sprouts and beans and lentils.
The classic doctor's office recommendation.
Exactly. It's the exact kind of meal a doctor tells you to eat because it's supposedly, perfectly healthy. So you force it down, assuming it's doing absolute wonders inside your body.
Right, you feel very virtuous eating it.
Yeah. But sitting there looking at this picture, I just found myself wondering, what is a massive bowl of raw beans actually doing to my system in real time?
Well, there's just this massive disconnect between the generic advice printed on those glossy pamphlets and the actual biological reality happening inside your bloodstream.
Totally.
We are so often handed these blanket recommendations like, eat more plant protein, load up on legumes, without any acknowledgement that human metabolisms do not all process a bowl of lentils the exact same way.
And breaking down that exact disconnect is the mission of today's deep dive. Because we are looking at a genuinely fascinating, completely grassroots self-experiment by a creator named Hemoj.
Yeah, he runs the YouTube channel Diabetes Guruji.
Right, and Hemoj has lived with type 2 diabetes for 15 years. And honestly, he clearly just got tired of guessing how different foods were affecting him.
Which is incredibly relatable for anyone managing a metabolic condition.
Wow, absolutely. So he went on this highly specific, very intense mission. For 16 days, he ate exactly 50 grams of protein from different single food sources each day.
Just 50 grams of protein, isolated.
Yep. And then he tracked the exact impact on his blood sugar at the 1 hour mark and the 2 hour mark using his glucose monitor.
And what's so fascinating here is that he's taking the abstract concept of, healthy eating and subjecting it to a severe stress test in the real world, inside an actual diabetic body.
Yeah, no lab rats here.
Exactly. An isolation test like this, eating just one specific food, to hit a massive 50-gram macronutrient goal, it strips away all the variables. Personalized, localized data like this is infinitely more valuable than generic guidelines because it reveals the hidden mechanisms of digestion.
Well, I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to completely rethink conventional dietary advice, especially when it comes to cheap plant-based proteins.
This is definitely eye-opening.
You're going to see exactly how a 15-year diabetic manages that incredibly delicate tightrope walk of getting high protein while keeping blood sugar under control. It's just a guy, his glucose monitor, and honestly, a staggering amount of food.
A truly staggering amount.
So let's get right into the rules of his 50-gram challenge and look at the foods that actually managed to deliver that protein without sending his sugar into the stratosphere.
The rules themselves are elegantly simple, but practically speaking, very demanding.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, getting 50 grams of protein from a single source in one sitting is not a normal meal. It's a deliberate overload to see how the pancreas and the digestive system handle the strain.
Right.
And the baseline assumption for many people, especially diabetics, is that eating a large volume of literally any food will inevitably cause some sort of blood sugar spike.
Okay, well, let's unpack this starting with day one. He kicks things off with eggs.
A classic staple.
Sure, but to hit 50 grams of protein, he had to eat 8 eggs.
Wow.
8. In one sitting. He notes this cost him around 60 rupees. Now, you'd think eating 8 eggs at once would cause a massive disruption to your system, but at the 1 hour mark, his blood sugar went up just 3 points.
Oh, look at a blip.
And then, by hour 2, it dropped by 11 points. A net decrease. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I read that.
See, that net decrease is a really crucial observation.
Why does it drop, though?
Well, the body's baseline metabolic processes are constantly burning energy, right? When you consume a food like eggs, which has a specific macronutrient profile heavily weighted toward protein and fat, with almost zero carbohydrates.
Right, no carbs in eggs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You aren't introducing any new glucose into the system. So the body just continues to process existing blood sugar, aided by the slow digestion of the egg, which leads to that drop.
That makes sense. And he saw even more dramatic drops with fish.
Oh, the fish data was incredible.
Yeah. He tested rohu fish, which he noted has really high amounts of good fat. In hour 1, his sugar dropped 14 points. In hour 2, it dropped 22 points.
Wow.
That is the biggest drop in the entire 16-day experiment. He also tested bangda, or mackerel, which dropped his sugar by 6 points and then 7 points.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the digestive mechanics of dietary fat.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Fish like rohu and banga aren't just, protein delivery systems. They are rich in healthy fats. And when you consume protein and fat together, it actively delays gastric emptying.
Meaning it sits in the stomach longer.
Yes, it forces the stomach to release food into the small intestine much, much more slowly.
Okay, so if eating pure carbohydrates is like pouring a bucket of water down a straight pipe, it hits the bottom instantly and causes a flood, right?
Exactly.
Then eating carbs or proteins bundled with heavy fats is like, I don't know, pouring water through a really dense sponge.
Yeah.
Like, it still gets to the bottom, but it drips through slowly, completely changing the impact on the system.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. The
Yeah.
fat acts as a buffer. The digestion process is bottlenecked in the best way possible, meaning the liver and pancreas are just never overwhelmed by a sudden rush of energy.
Which explains the meat category perfectly. He ate chicken breast, which is very lean. That caused minor bumps, up 11 points, then up 7 points.
Yeah.
Still great.
Very stable.
But then he tested mutton paya, which are goat trotters,
Huh.
and he explicitly noted that while the protein in the trotters was slightly lower, the fat content was incredibly high.
Right. Highly fatty cut of meat.
And the result was absolutely zero change. 0 at hour 1, 0 at hour 2, just a complete flat line.
That is the sponge effect in action.
Totally. He also tested mutton kaleji, the liver, which cost him about 120 rupees. That one rose by 11 points, then dropped by 2. So again, very, very stable.
Yeah, the high fat content in the mutton paya essentially suspended any immediate glycemic impact. The sponge in your analogy was so dense that the blood sugar simply didn't budge.
But I have to push back a little here on the reality of this specific challenge.
Oh, the volume of food.
Yes. Eating 8 eggs is a lot, but a really hungry person can do it. Getting 50 grams of protein from some of these other sources is just, it's bordering on the absurd.
It's definitely not a typical Tuesday lunch.
Take curd or yogurt. To get 50 grams of protein from curd, which cost him 120 rupees, by the way, he had to consume somewhere between 1.25 to 2 kilograms of it.
Which is wild.
That's not having a snack. That's treating yogurt like a competitive eating event.
It really is a staggering volume of food for one sitting. But it highlights the difficulty of getting concentrated protein from secondary sources.
Yeah. And he also drank 1.5 liters of milk in a single go to hit the protein goal.
Also not recommended for the casual diner.
No. Now, I will say the numbers were incredibly stable considering the sheer volume he ingested. 2 kilos of curd only raised his sugar by 2 points in hour 1 and 12 points in hour 2.
And the milk.
The 1.5 liters of milk went up 18 points, then 14 points, which is nothing for that amount of liquid.
Well, the milk and the curd contain natural dairy fats and complex proteins like casein.
Okay, what does casein do?
Casein literally forms a gel in the stomach which slows down digestion immensely, even when consumed in these massive, almost comical quantities.
Competitive eating quantities.
Right, that fat-protein matrix buffers the digestion so effectively that his blood sugar remains highly controlled.
Okay, so animal proteins and dairy are the clear winners for blood sugar stability. But there's a massive elephant in the room here.
Cost and culture.
Exactly. If you're living in India, where Hemoj is based, or you're just on a tight grocery budget anywhere in the world, eating 8 eggs or a massive plate of mackerel or expensive mutton for every single meal isn't just difficult, it's financially impossible.
It's completely out of reach for the average person.
Millions of people have to rely on cheap plant-based proteins. So let's look at what happened when he switched to the everyday foods people actually can afford.
And this is where the data gets incredibly illuminating. And, frankly, for anyone who relies on generic health advice, highly counterintuitive.
Because here's where it gets really interesting. Moving from those stable foods, we hit the plant-based options. First, let's give credit to the safe plant proteins he found.
Right, not all plants spike to sugar.
Exactly. He tested soya chunks. They went up just 3 points, then dropped 9 points. Very stable. Tofu, made from soybeans, dropped 7 points, then went up 1 point.
Excellent numbers.
And peanuts went up 16 points in hour 1 and 16 points in hour 2.
The peanuts are a fantastic example of the sponge effect we discussed earlier.
Because of the fat.
Yes, just like the fish and the mutton, peanuts have natural fats and fiber doing the heavy lifting to slow down digestion. Soybeans, whether as chunks or tofu, also have a highly favorable protein-to-carb ratio.
But then we get to the dals.
The legumes.
The very foods that every pamphlet in that doctor's office calls a superfood. This is what Hemoj calls the dal disaster.
It is a dramatic shift in the data.
Let's look at black chana or black chickpeas. Remember, he's just trying to get 50 grams of protein. In hour 1, his blood sugar spiked 97 points.
Wow.
In hour 2, it was up 57 points.
A near 100-point jump is a massive glycemic event for a diabetic. I mean, that is the kind of spike that causes cellular damage over time.
And it actually gets worse. Rajma, kidney beans, spiked 90 points in hour 1, 70 points in hour 2. Kabuli chana, regular chickpeas, spiked 107 points, then 59 points.
Those are staggering numbers.
And then we have the absolute shocker, mung beans.
The quintessential health food recommendation.
Yes. People constantly eat bowls of raw mung salad specifically because health blogs tell them to. It is viewed as the ultimate safe, green protein.
It really is.
But mung beans act like a nutritional Trojan horse. They look like this healthy, innocent protein source on the outside, but inside they are hiding a massive sugar spike. The mung beans caused the highest spike of the entire 16-day challenge.
The highest of all of them.
The highest. They spiked his blood sugar an incredible 115 points in hour 1 and 72 points in hour 2.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the math behind the food.
Please do, because it seems crazy.
It's not that dals and mung beans are inherently toxic or bad for you. The issue lies in the macronutrient ratio required to achieve a high-protein goal.
Okay.
See, dals are universally praised as high-protein foods,
Right.
but scientifically speaking, they're actually high-carbohydrate foods that just happen to contain a moderate amount of protein.
Break that math down for us. Why is his body reacting like he just ate a massive candy bar?
Well, think about the chicken he ate. To get 50 grams of protein from chicken, you eat about 160 grams of chicken breast. That comes with almost zero carbohydrates.
Right.
But dal is only about 20 to 25% protein by weight. The vast majority of the rest of the bean is carbohydrate.
Oh, wow.
So to extract 50 grams of protein from a source like mung beans or black chana, Hemoj was forced to consume roughly 200 to 250 grams of raw dal.
Which is a massive bowl of beans. So because the protein isn't isolated, it comes bundled with all those carbs.
Precisely. To get his 50 grams of protein, he inadvertently had to consume over 100 grams of carbohydrates in a single sitting.
That's huge.
It is. Unlike the eggs or the fish where you get protein and fat, the dal delivers a carbohydrate payload that is 3 or 4 times larger than the protein payload.
So he's sitting down thinking, I'm being good, I'm eating my healthy plant protein, but his pancreas is screaming, incoming carb avalanche. The system just gets completely overwhelmed, resulting in those alarming 100+ point spikes. It really shatters that illusion of the generic superfood. Which brings us to the brutal reality of this whole experiment, the cost-to-health ratio.
Yeah, economics always play a hidden role in our dietary choices, and they often dictate our metabolic health.
So what does this all mean for the grocery budget? That black chana, which spiked his sugar by 97 points, it was the cheapest food he tested.
Well, of course it was.
It cost him just 20 rupees per kilogram. Meanwhile, the incredibly stable eggs cost 60 rupees for the portion he needed. The mutton kaleji, which kept his sugar beautifully stable, cost 120 rupees.
It's a frustrating reality.
The stark reality of his data is that the cheap, heavily recommended everyday staples are the exact ones causing the massive sugar spikes.
And it highlights a really difficult systemic truth in managing conditions like diabetes. Calorie for calorie, carbohydrate-dense foods like legumes and grains are drastically cheaper to produce, store, and purchase than protein and fat-dense foods like meat, fish, and dairy.
Right.
So when generic health advice simply tells a diabetic patient to eat more cheap plant protein without explaining the math of the accompanying carbohydrate load, it inadvertently sabotages their blood sugar control.
So how do you practically apply this data? Because Hemoj isn't telling his audience to never eat dal again and just go broke buying expensive meats every single meal.
No, not at all. Yeah. His conclusion is far more nuanced. He focuses entirely on portion control and respecting your metabolic limits, rather than chasing a massive protein number from the wrong source.
Right. Because of these terrifying results with the legumes, his explicit recommendation to his viewers is to strongly limit their dal intake. He advises keeping dal portions to just 20 to 25 grams.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, at that much smaller quantity, you still get the nutritional benefit of the vitamins and the fiber without burying your system in an avalanche of glucose it can't clear.
That 20 to 25 gram rule is the crucial takeaway here. It really forces a paradigm shift. Well, it moves dal from being the massive primary protein source in the center of the plate, which we now know causes massive spikes, to being a small side dish.
But that creates a very practical new problem.
It does.
If you aren't filling up on massive bowls of dal and you're eating a moderate portion of stable proteins like fish or soya chunks, you still need to eat a full meal. People don't eat protein in a vacuum.
Right, you need energy.
You eat it with rice or roti, and pairing these stable proteins with a massive plate of standard white rice would just cause a different carb avalanche, completely defeating the purpose of the careful protein selection.
And this raises an important question. How do you optimize the pairing? Because if you stabilize the protein, you have to find a carbohydrate that actually behaves in the bloodstream.
And Hemoj knows this,
Yeah.
which is so cool. At the end of his summary video, he teases his next experiment, which is meant to solve this exact carb problem.
Oh, interesting. What is it?
He introduces a product he bought, and he makes a huge point to say it is absolutely not sponsored. He just bought it, called Blazed Rice, by a brand named Stay Healthy, Eat Healthy.
Okay, so testing a specialized engineered carbohydrate. That is the logical next step for someone rigorously tracking data.
Yeah, and the specs on this rice are wild. It claims to have an exceptionally low glycemic index, or GI, of just 45.
That is low.
It also claims to have high-resistant starch, 12 grams of protein, 12 grams of fiber, and only 73 grams of carbohydrates, which he notes is quite a bit lower than standard rice.
Well, we should unpack what those specs actually mean for his body. The glycemic index is a scale from 0 to 100 that measures how quickly a food raises your blood sugar.
Pure glucose is 100, right?
Yes, pure glucose is 100, water is 0. Regular white rice usually sits dangerously high, up in the 70s, meaning breaks down rapidly into sugar. So a GI of 45 is remarkably low for a rice product.
And what about this resistant starch? Because normally your stomach breaks down starches into sugar almost instantly.
Right, but resistant starch does exactly what the name implies. It physically resists the digestive process in the stomach and small intestine.
So it doesn't turn into sugar right away?
Exactly. Instead of being rapidly broken down to glucose, it passes through to the colon where it ferments. It acts much more like a dietary fiber.
Oh, wow.
So the combination of higher protein, higher fiber, and this resistant starch means the rice won't dump glucose into the bloodstream all at once.
Right. Well, Hemoj plans to test his blood sugar before and after eating this specific blazed rice alongside his stable proteins in his next video. He wants to see if this is finally a way for diabetics to enjoy a classic rice and protein meal without the massive spikes.
It's basically the holy grail of diabetic diet management, finding a comforting, culturally appropriate carbohydrate that doesn't trigger an emergency response from the pancreas.
Exactly.
If that rice works as advertised, paired with the stable proteins from his first 16 days, it provides a highly actionable, affordable, real-world meal template.
I am genuinely invested in what his glucose monitor shows for that rice. It's been such a journey going through his data. So let's briefly recap the ultimate lesson from his 16-day deep dive.
Sure.
When it came to hitting a strict 50-gram protein goal, the non-veg options, the dairy, and the soy products kept things incredibly stable. They often buffered the blood sugar entirely due to their fat and complex protein structures.
And conversely, trying to hit that massive protein goal using dals and legumes, the traditional, generic, healthy staples caused dangerous spikes. And that was purely due to the massive, unavoidable carbohydrate load required to get enough protein out of a single bean.
Which brings us right back to where we started, staring at that generic pamphlet and that massive superfood salad in the waiting room.
Social.
We so often blindly follow advice like, eat more lentils or load up on mung beans without ever stopping to consider the actual math of the food or our own individual metabolic responses.
Because the data doesn't lie. What looks like a superfood on paper or in a printed dietary guideline might be acting as a complete metabolic landmine in your unique system.
So we leave you with this thought to mull over. If you were to channel your inner Hemoj, grab a glucose monitor, and run a strict, data-driven test on your own absolute favorite healthy meal right now, what hidden spikes do you think you might find lurking in there?
It's definitely a question worth asking before your next meal.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep tracking the data, and always keep questioning what's actually on your plate. We'll catch you next time.